Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I am the Customer Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Why is Microsoft Turning on Your MFA? Presented by David Monroe. Before we get started, let's go over some housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, throughout the webinar, you can submit any questions you have. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the questions section in your GoToWebinar, and we'll answer all your questions at the end of the presentation. We're also recording this presentation and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees as well as those who registered but were unable to attend. And finally, we'd appreciate your participation in our closing poll and survey. With that said, we're thrilled that you've taken some time out of your busy day to be with us on this webinar. We're here to help you fulfill your vision of a smarter and easier way to run your business by providing the tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. So whether you're here to explore a new solution or you're just here to learn, don't hesitate to ask any questions you have. And lastly, as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. Check us out and give us a follow on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube so you don't miss out. Okay, that's enough for me. Let's hand it over to David for the main event.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Courtney said, my name is Dave Monroe. I'm one of the technical account managers here at SWK. In my role as a TAM at SWK, I guide my clients through complex infrastructure, cybersecurity, licensing, and line of business application challenges. So today, we're going to be going over a few different things related to MFA and other cybersecurity measures. Just a brief rundown of the agenda. I'm going to start with an intro to MFA and how it protects against phishing and other forms of attack. From there, I'll transition right over into some MFA statistics, then go into why Microsoft is turning on your MFA, some cyber hygiene best practices, both for MFA and overall cybersecurity, and then also take a look at some real world applications and industries that rely on MFA, and then take a look at some challenges and considerations, and the need for security awareness training, and then finally finish up there with some future trends and a Q&A. So a quick overview of SWK Technologies. We're a nationally recognized MSP and solution provider in North America. We have nationwide coverage, leveraging over 170 employees that try to delight our customers and enable success. So here on the slide here, you see some of our accolades over the last couple of years. Take a chance to review that when the slideshow is sent out. But for now, let's go ahead and get right into it. So MFA, how does it protect against phishing and other forms of attack? So let's start real quick with what is MFA? MFA is a security process that requires a user to provide at least two or more separate forms of identification before granting access to an application. Some types of verification methods, authentication factors as we call them, fall into three categories. So something you know, like a password, something you have, such as a mobile device, and something you are. So think biometrics, a fingerprint, or facial recognition software. MFA and phishing. So MFA enhances security by requiring multiple layers of verification before granting access to an account or system. This makes it significantly harder for attackers to breach, as they would need more than just a password. Even if a password is compromised, the additional verification step, like a text message or biometric scan, they act as a barrier, reducing the risk of unauthorized access. Furthermore, there's additional policies such as conditional access that can be put in place, and more on that later. As a TAM, recently, I've seen an increase in cyber attacks, right? So I'm typically one of the first people to be notified of a potential breach. From there, I engage the appropriate teams here at SWK to first mitigate the compromise, but then also work with those teams and my clients to remediate and help put in place measures that would prevent an attack like that in the future. The reason I bring this up is because it's been happening more frequently than I would like, or any of us would like, really. A recent study from a leading cybersecurity firm stated that in 2022 alone, 43% of cyber attacks were aimed at SMBs, and only 14% of those SMBs were prepared for an attack. SMBs typically have weaker cybersecurity measures than larger enterprises, But just rest assured, SWK does have the capability to implement top-notch and world-class security measures and does so daily across our client base. MFA is at the top of that list of the security measures that we do implement on a daily basis. We do that quite frequently, as it happens to be a cost-effective and budget-friendly measure to implement. It's not as expensive as some of the other cyber measures that we have in place or can put in place. It's a good first step. However, as I will go over in a few slides, MFA is only one layer in what should be a multi-layered approach. So some quick statistics here. 99% of account compromise attacks can be blocked with MFA. 76% of surveyed businesses saw a decrease in phishing incidents after implementing MFA. MFA can prevent over 80% of cyber attacks that target stolen or weak passwords. 38% of large organizations still don't use MFA, which is shocking, and numbers are way worse with SMBs. MFA stops 96% of bulk phishing attempts. MFA also stops 76% of targeted attacks, so think spear phishing. Especially today with social media such as LinkedIn or any other public-facing websites or email addresses, bad actors are able to obtain email addresses of executives and leadership pretty easily. 91% of cyber attacks all begin with email. So while we are all here, excuse me, why is Microsoft turning on your MFA? Right. So Microsoft's commitment to cybersecurity, so promoting MFA aligns with Microsoft's commitment to securing data and protecting users. As cyber threats grow more sophisticated, MFA offers a simple yet highly effective barrier to unauthorized access. It's an essential part of Microsoft's broader security ecosystem. So why is Microsoft promoting the use of MFA? In today's complex digital landscape, MFA offers the basic protection against cyber threats. How MFA aligns with other security features in Microsoft products. So MFA works seamlessly with other Microsoft security features, such as conditional access, Azure Active Directory, and Office 365 security and compliance. Together, they provide a layered defense strategy, making security more robust without compromising the end user experience. Microsoft security defaults. So Microsoft, for the last few months, I would say, has been automatically turning on security defaults. And security defaults are a simple and basic implementation of security settings and policies, such as MFA. This is all well and great. However, it's just a basic implementation. SWK highly recommends taking this one step further and implementing a policy or a set of policies called conditional access. Conditional access policies are measures that can be added to MFA that check for a set of conditions prior to granting the login permission. Conditions are checked real time, and these conditions are customizable and can range from geolocation to IP address, actual device, physical address, and many more. And as we continue through this presentation, you'll hear me mention the term layered. I've done that a few times at this point, but going forward, I still, will continue to use the term layered. And adding conditional access policies, to MFA adds another layer of security in what should be, again, a layered cybersecurity and defense strategy. Let's go over some cyber hygiene and best practices. And for right now, I'm just going to target MFA. So cyber hygiene refers to practices and habits that organizations must adopt to maintain the health and security of their systems. I'm going to go over some MFA hygiene and best practices, then I'll touch on the cybersecurity landscape at large in the next slide. But utilizing different methods of authentication factors. So just best practice here would be to utilize at least 2 of the 3 categories of authentication factors. So two of the following out of the 3. Something you know, like a password, something you have, such as a mobile device, or something you are, like a fingerprint or facial recognition or voice, which is also now becoming popular as well. And how this relates to cyber hygiene, by requiring 2 diverse types at least of verification, the security is strengthened. So if one were to become compromised, you still can rely on the other while you're implementing your backup measures. So regularly reviewing and updating MFA protocols. So the best practice here, I would say, is to conduct regular reviews of MFA protocols and update them as necessary to adapt to the emerging threats and different technologies that are coming out on a regular, almost daily basis, it seems, right? So how does this relate to cyber hygiene? So cyber hygiene requires continuous attention to ensure that security measures remain effective and up to date. Educating users about the importance of MFA. So education, especially when it comes to MFA, and as we get into just cyber, phishing and cyber, security prevention at large is so important. End users typically are the weakest link, so we can deploy the most up-to-date firewall, we can have patching and all these other security measures in place. But if a user isn't educated on best practices, then they become a target and a weak link that can compromise the entire system, or at least the parts that they have access to immediately, right? So implementing some recovery options, a best practice here, I would say, would provide alternatives for users to regain access if they lose or cannot access one of the authentication factors. How this relates to cyber hygiene. So planning for contingencies is a part of maintaining, the ongoing health and security of your system. So always having backups to the various areas, in this case, MFA. So now I would like to talk about some cyber best practices when we're talking about overall cybersecurity. So regular software updates, very, very important. Keeping all software, including operating systems, applications, and security tools, up to date with the latest patches and updates. Make sure to regularly check for updates and apply them promptly to address known vulnerabilities and security weaknesses. This practice helps prevent exploitation of known security flaws by attackers. Strong and unique passwords. Enforce the use of strong and unique passwords for all accounts and systems. Passwords should be complex, including a mix of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters. Encourage employees to use passphrase-based passwords that are easy for them to remember but hard for attackers to guess. And then also implementing MFA further enhances password security, right? So the more secure or unique the password coupled with MFA, it highly protects that employee's login from compromise. Employee education and awareness, providing ongoing cybersecurity training and awareness programs for employees, making sure to educate them about common threats like phishing, social engineering, and malware. Also teaching them how to identify suspicious emails, links, and attachments. Also encourage the reporting of potential security incidents. Nothing is too small. If they feel something is out of place, definitely encourage and foster a culture of being able to uh, report that. And then regular training also helps employees make informed decisions and reduces the risk of human error. Data backup and recovery strategies. So implementing a robust data backup strategy that includes regular automated backups of critical data, highly, highly important. Backup should be stored both on-site and off-site following something called a 3-2-1 rule. So 3 copies on 2 different forms of media and then keeping 1 off-site. Regularly test that restoration process to ensure backups are functional and reliable. And this approach helps mitigate the impact of data loss due to hardware failures, cyber attacks, or human errors. Network, excuse me, network segmentation. So divide your network into segments or zones based on principle of least privilege. So segmenting the network limits lateral movement for attackers and reduces the potential impact of a security breach. Critical systems, sensitive data, IoT devices, etc. They should all be isolated from each other. So also think accounting, HR, engineering, plant, like all of those different departments, segmenting the network that way. Somebody in the accounting department doesn't have access to, or maybe not accounting, but maybe the plant doesn't have access to accounting and vice versa, right? So um, making sure the network is segmented based on those types of rules, very, very important. And then finally, firewall configuration, configuring firewalls to enforce strict inbound and outbound traffic policies, allow only necessary traffic and block all other unauthorized access, regularly review and update firewall rules to reflect changes in the network's architecture and requirements, implement intrusion detection systems, to identify and mitigate potentially malicious network activity. And remember that cybersecurity is an ongoing process, and these practices should be reviewed on a regular basis, updated, and adapt to the evolving threat landscape that your organization faces on a daily basis. So the point I would like to drive home here is that while MFA is an extremely important first layer of defense, it's not the only layer, and proper cyber hygiene takes into account multiple layers, as you see here. Transitioning now into some real world applications, different industries that rely on MFA. So real world applications of MFA in different settings. And a lot of these industries, MFA at a minimum is required to adhere to any compliancy boards. So for financial institutions, MFA safeguards sensitive financial data and complies with regulatory requirements such as PCI, DSS. Healthcare organizations, it protects patient information and complies with regulations like HIPAA by utilizing MFA in systems handling medical records. Government agencies enhances security of critical infrastructure and sensitive governmental information. So a lot of times, these agencies, these different compliancy boards that govern these different industries won't even allow a contract or allow uh, contract without, at the very minimum, multi-factor authentication being implemented. Remote work and home environments, we've been seeing an increasingly amount of workers are now remote, hybrid, or some form of that. And MFA secures access to company resources over the internet. That's crucial for remote and hybrid workers. And then for SMBs, MFA provides a cost-effective way to enhance security uh, just by having that second factor as a login method, protecting your customer data and intellectual property, but also your reputation. Compromises, especially if one of your vendors is on either the receiving end or just kind of caught in the mix up there, could really damage your reputation also. So having MFA at a minimum is highly, highly recommended. And in most cases, as you see across the board here, is required for a lot of these different uh, industries. So recognizing the potential challenges in following best practices can lead to successful MFA deployment that strengthens security without hindering usability. That's a really big thing. And the adaptability of MFA to various sectors from finance to healthcare, it showcases its versatility and essential role in today's complex security landscape. All starts with that first layer. MFA should be that first layer from a user perspective. So some challenges and considerations for MFA and also the need for security awareness training. So user adoption and resistance. Implementing MFA might face resistance from users due to perceived inconvenience or complexity. Proper education, training, and communication about the importance of MFA can help in overcoming that challenge. Being open, being transparent as to the reasons why you're doing this, why you're implementing the security measure. Integration with existing systems and applications. So ensuring compatibility and functionality with existing systems can be complex, requiring careful planning, development, and testing, right? So it's vital to consider legacy systems and various application interfaces when implementing MFA. Balancing security and user experience. So creating a robust security environment without hindering user experience can be very challenging. Thoughtful implementation must be aimed at providing strong security measures while still maintaining usability and efficiency for end users. Some potential risks and mitigations. So there are inherent risks in MFA, such as loss or inaccessible second factors or potential threats like SIN swapping attacks, implementing recovery options, and just backing up your MFA instance and countermeasures needs to be a part of that MFA strategy. So not only implementing MFA, but also, hey, if one of my factors were to become compromised or lost, or now since we're coming up on the fall season, holiday season, new phones, new technology, people switch things out, making sure that those um, backup codes are essentially backed up. That way, when your employee says, "Hey, I switched my phone. Can we change over my multi-factor device?" It's a seamless process. Cost and resource allocation. So the implementation of MFA requires investments in technology, training, and also ongoing support. Budget consideration, resource allocation, and potential need for specialized expertise can be challenges that organizations must navigate in their MFA strategy. Good thing here is SWK does this on a daily basis. And as far as working with companies of all sizes, from 2 users up to several hundred, we're able to implement MFA in a cost-effective way without really inhibiting much of the end user experience. Some quick future trends here. So the continuous evolution of technology will lead to new authentication methods or improved efficiency and security in existing methods. So right now, biometrics, the current state of that, finger and facial recognition are commonly used. So on your phone or even on some laptops, different tablets, use fingerprints, you get your Face ID or your facial recognition. In the future, other biometric factors such as voice recognition may also become more prevalent. We're seeing that now. The impact here will have greater accuracy and security, tailoring the authentication process to unique individual characteristics, therefore enhancing that security all the more. So some AI and ML. So artificial intelligence and machine learning. So currently AI and ML are increasingly used in cybersecurity, but still kind of emerging in MFA. In the future, these technologies may enable real-time analysis of authentication attempts, and we're seeing a little bit of that now, learning from patterns to detect fraudulent activities. And the impact here in the future will, enhance efficiency and security by identifying and reacting to threats more rapidly, often in real time, and often in a predictive nature before it happens. Adaptive authentication, so think conditional authentication, risk-based authentication. The current state here is some systems already implement risk-based measures, adjusting authentication requirements based on a specific context. In the future, more sophisticated, nuanced risk assessments, integrating various data sources like user behavior, device reputation, and some environmental factors, right? Take those into consideration. And the impact there will have a more tailored security approach, providing robust protection without unnecessary barriers for low risk activities. Contextual and behavioral analytics, analysis of user behavior and context is an emerging field. The system in the future, the system might consider time, location, device. We're seeing some of that now too, and even typing patterns to the side of authentication methods. Impact here, increase user-friendly security by aligning authentication demands with real-world risk levels, right? So very, very important. Also, integration with the broader security ecosystem. Current state MFA often functions as a standalone component within the security framework. In the future, you'll see closer integration with other security tools and systems, enabling a more cohesive and responsive security posture. We will see more and more integration with other security tools happening now. The future will provide a more unified approach. And the impact in the future also will provide something that's more unified, like I just mentioned, and also more adaptive, a more adaptive security approach that operates seamlessly across the organizational environment. So that is all of the new content I have today. I did want to take a moment here just to recap what I think are 4 really important points that I've touched upon throughout this webinar here. So MFA involves using 2 or more forms of identification for access, thereby enhancing security, right? So password, device, biometrics. Additionally, while Microsoft security defaults include basic MFA, enhancing security with conditional access policies is very highly recommended. Um, Educating users about MFA's importance, echoing how the education promotes health awareness. And then also MFA, just if there was really one thing that I really wanted to highlight here, MFA is one layer. It's a crucial layer, very, very important. It's a must-have. It's a risk to your business if you don't have it, but it's also only one layer in what should be a multi-layered cyber approach, cyber strategy. Okay. Just want to take a moment here. Thank everybody for attending today's webinar. SWK is available to provide a helping hand if needed. We have an IT consulting and services division that can help you with most problems, most requests to improve your performance and your security, and also provide any of the services that you see listed right here. And for everyone today, we are offering a special webinar offer. Me and the team have come together with an external vulnerability assessment and penetration test, and we're going to offer that for $600. If you have any interest in potentially uh, having a vulnerability assessment and pen test run on you, just go ahead and reach out to info@swktech.com. Just a quick note here that assessment typically runs around $1,300, so it's a little more than half off. So that's a tremendous deal, and from that you're able to uh, get a pretty decent snapshot of where you stand, at least from a network security perspective. So that's something I would definitely recommend taking advantage of. So thank you so much for joining our webinar. And I'm going to head over to the next slide. And I will go ahead and take that back to Courtney.
Yes, so thank you, David. So thanks for such a great presentation. And as we're going into the Q&A portion, we just want to ask you a quick poll. So would you like to be contacted with more information, whether it's about that vulnerability test David just spoke on, that is, great discount at half price, so you can really see, where your company is currently at. If you would like to learn more about MFA and better knowledge about the IT best practices, we can have our team reach out. If you want to learn more about our managed cloud services, what we have, definitely let us know. And so thank you for everyone that's answered the poll so far. We're going to leave it open for a few more seconds, and then, like I said, we're going to move into the Q&A portion. So we've had a few questions come in throughout, David, and then if you have any questions that you haven't had an opportunity to submit yet, just look for the questions box or the chat section of your GoToWebinar, and I'll get those off to David for you. We're going to close out the poll now, so a couple seconds if you're, still a little indecisive there. And so now we're going to go into the Q&A portion. So David, I've got a few, like I said, I've got a few questions already ready for you to go from during your presentation. Ready to start giving some answers?
Go right ahead.
Awesome. So during the webinar, we had someone say, you mentioned educating users about MFA. How would you recommend doing that?
It's a great question. So first, you want to start with a clear and simple explanation of what MFA is and why it's important. Highlight some of the advantages of using MFA, such as enhanced security and protection against unauthorized access. Provide easy to follow setup guides for enabling MFA on your various platforms. Share some real world examples of security breaches that could have been prevented with MFA, right? So maybe some man in the middle attacks, that's a big one there. And also, interactive workshops and webinars like this one. Conduct interactive sessions with your users that can learn about MFA throughout some live demonstrations and Q&A.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question is, what is the best way to ensure our cybersecurity protection is always up to date?
That's a fantastic question. So there's a bunch, right? So patch management, security audits and assessments, automated monitoring, security training, incident response plans, business disaster recovery solutions, access control reviews, pen testing, network segmentation. These are some good ways. And SWK has the capability to provide these services to our clients. So in short, reach out to us and we can inform you. But those are some of the ones that that are worth mentioning there.
Okay. And our next question is, what is covered in an external vulnerability test?
Sure. So external scans target external IP addresses in your network. They all identify vulnerabilities as well as all the ports that can be accessed from the internet. So when you have a port that can be accessed from the internet, that leaves it susceptible to being identified by a bad actor. So definitely we can, during those different scans and different tests, those types of things come up. And then from there we can remediate.
Great. And what if multi-factor authentication is bypassed? It poses a significant security risk as MFA is an important thing. So important for accessing accounts and central information. So, what is that step if the multi-factor authentication is bypassed?
So I had touched upon throughout the presentation, something called conditional access policies. So in those policies, there is a setting, or in the 365 portal, there is a setting that prevents end users from bypassing MFA. So if those security policies and measures were implemented, which is what we do as part of our best practices when implementing conditional access MFA, we definitely turn that on. And only SWK or a very highly authorized individual within that particular company has the access or ability or know-how even to turn that off. So bypassing, we can control that through a policy.
Great, that's great to know. And I think potentially, we've had a couple more come in. So I think this is a follow-up there on this question. So if one of someone on the webinar wants to take advantage of that vulnerability test, how would SWK then help them fix the issues that are found during that test?
So there's a report generated during those two tests. And then from there, I work closely with our engineers to develop a plan and prioritize what should be addressed first. And then you and I can work on, again, prioritizing that based off your budget, based off of a variety of factors to see which we should implement first.
Okay. And I might need some additional clarity on this one, but David, you let me know if you are able to answer this. For the penetration testing, what are ports to allow during penetration test? I'm assuming during the penetration test.
So yeah, I would definitely need more clarification. So what
Mm-hmm.
ports need to be open? That's I guess my next question. Like, are you asking what ports would need to be available to perform that test?
Yes, so that's a question. Yes, I think they are asking, what ports need to be available for that test.
That's a great question. I'll have to. That's something I would need to get with our cyber analysts on, as they're the ones that perform those tests, and specifically, it could vary depending on what they come back with.
Okay, and if that was your question, we can definitely reach out and we can follow up and give you some more information there. It might be a case by case basis. And David, I think that is going to conclude our Q&A. I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds if we have any final submissions. But I'd like to thank everyone for taking time out of their day to be with us. Thank you, David, for all the information you shared. If you guys have more questions, if you want to take advantage of that vulnerability test or any of the other offerings we have, just reach out to us at info@swktech.com, and we'll be able to connect you with David and his team. Also, you'll be getting this recording in your inbox tomorrow afternoon, so you can review it and look at it as you please and review that deck information. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.